old for video games?
You have failed.
The same way, I will destroy you. And my friend is truly dead.
Now this is pod racing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Jedi Council Chambers. I am UrzaMaster. Joining me as always on the council, Jedi Master Psyllium Maas and Lord Uther. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome back.
Hello there.
Good morning.
General Kenobi. I can never hear the words hello there without thinking of that ridiculous line. Well, we're talking more Mandalorian today. Really excited, honestly, to talk these two episodes. These were two of my favorite in Season 1. Not to give away my ratings, but I feel like this first season, there's a reason why they made more. So, without further ado, I want to turn this over to our background Jedi Master, Psyllium Maas. Let's hear a little bit more about these two entries in Season 1 of The Mandalorian.
Thank you, Jedi Master, UrzaMaster. Thank you, Jedi Master, Lord Uther. And thanks to all of you graying Jedi fans out there. As we enter the back 9, or rather the back 4, of The Mandalorian Season 1. And we have a little treat, I suppose, today. There were 8 episodes in Season 1. 6 of them were written by writer, producer, director, actor, Jon Favreau. He had time to do 6 of them, but he didn't find the time to get behind the typewriter for 2 of them. And those were the 2 that we'll be discussing today. And in one regard, with one particular episode, the second of which we'll be examining, it does give the show a slightly different identity. And we'll talk more about that when we cover Chapter 6. But first we're going to do Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, which originally premiered on Disney Plus on December 6th, 2019. This writer and director is none other than Lucasfilm creative CEO Dave Filoni. Now you will remember Mr. Filoni directed the pilot that Favreau wrote for Mandalorian, Chapter 1. But this is his first writing, directing, live action combo in the Star Wars saga. He would later go on to work on an episode of the Book of Boba Fett, and of course Ahsoka. He wrote every episode and got to direct a couple. But this was his first fledgling step to have full control behind the camera, if you will, creative control. And he was inspired by Clint Eastwood's Oscar-winning 1992 film Unforgiven, in which an older, wiser, seasoned gunslinger is teamed with a younger, impetuous bounty hunter, and they're to team up on a mission, and it ends up with not so great results, particularly for the younger bounty hunter. And we're starting to see more, again, names, right? And I think I mentioned this in an earlier episode of The Graying Jedi, of which this is your 21st. So if you're just joining us now, please go ahead and click subscribe and check out the archives on Pending Rebrand. Because where have you been? So we've covered Ahsoka, and we're covering The Mandalorian, and we're going to be covering the Book of Boba Fett, and we're going to be doing all sorts of fun things here this year on The Graying Jedi. So please, by all means, we're glad to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. But come back and see some of our other past highlights. But in any event, I think I brought this up before. I'll bring it up again. It's always exciting for this Star Wars fan to see people outside of the Star Wars universe try their hand, if you will. I know that some people might think that's distracting. Oh, I don't want to see Jack Black, or oh, is that Nick Nolte voicing an Ugnaught? But I've always kind of enjoyed that, if you will. I've always wanted to see what Woody Harrelson would do, or Carl Weathers, or Werner Herzog. So what the live action Star Wars streaming shows have been able to do is expand that and give us people that, again, you might not ordinarily associate with science fiction or genre or even Star Wars specifically, but they usually bring their A games. And here we had Amy Sedaris, noted comedian, author, and this is the first appearance of a recurring role she'll have as a mechanic on Tatooine, playing Peli Motto, and she will appear in subsequent seasons as well, but this was her debut on the show. We have Ming-Na Wen, who needs little introduction, of course, the voice of Disney's Mulan and Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's funny, when she started in the business with more sincere dramas like the Joy Luck Club, you never would have guessed her to turn into like a martial artist slash, stunt fighter. But she more than holds her own, beginning with Marvel S.H.I.E.L.D. And then here. She definitely can throw elbows and fisticuffs with the best of them. And
Lest we forget Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within.
Yes, no, I wouldn't, and thank you for reminding me, Jedi Master, UrzaMaster. And then for the young bounty hunter, who turns out to be a pain in the parsec, we have Jake Cannavale, who is the son of actor Bobby Cannavale, whom I know you've seen in a lot of works, including the big screen remake of Annie with Jamie Foxx recently. That's the one that will always stick with me. He plays Toro Calican, just looking to make a name for himself and join the Bounty Hunters Guild. He's also he's the son of Bobby, and Bobby is with Jenny Lumet. And we've talked about Jenny before on our other pending rebrand science fiction analysis recap tribute, The Warp Core, because Miss Lumet is, of course, the writer-producers of Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Strange New Worlds and Star Trek Discovery. So some interesting threads and connections there, if you will. And that's basically what Episode 5, The Gunslinger, gives us. This is a direct connect to our original trilogy, because we are back, friends, on a planet that is the furthest away from anything interesting in the galaxy, according to a former resident, Luke Skywalker. This is Tatooine, and specifically we are back in Mos Eisley, and specifically we even get to pay a visit to the Mos Eisley Cantina, which post-Imperial collapse is not the once hustling, bustling, musically jamming cantina that we remember. It actually looked like a very sad singles bar in this episode. The droids, remember when they weren't allowed inside? Now they're running the place, basically. So, but boy, was it a joy to see the rebuilt, refurbished, reimagined cantina set that we all remember from 1977's A New Hope. So we return there. We start off with an epic duel between the Razor Crest and another bounty hunter, and I believe that's our first ship-to-ship combat in the series. And ILM gives us plenty of daring do and maneuverings and so forth that we've come to expect dogfighting. So that was a nice intro, but it leaves the Razor Crest in dire need of repairs. And so that brings the Mandalorian and child to Tatooine, where they meet Peli Motto and her lovable pit droids. And he starts looking for work. And he enters said cantina, and he runs into the torture droid from Jabba's palace from Return of the Jedi, is now tending bar, and is voiced by none other than Mark Hamill. Electronically modulated, but he was the droid who said that Mando might be hard up for work these days. There's no guild work on Tatooine. And by the way, Mos Eisley got a little rough. There are stormtrooper heads on pikes as you enter the city. So that's kind of a telling sign there. Again, post-Empire, the rise up of the citizenry, and now we have freedom. But it's a little mean, little Game of Thrones-ish for me to see bloody stormtroopers' helmets impaled on sharp sticks. But that's what greets Mando as he enters the most wretched hive of scum and villainy. The big note we have here, and it's something that gets touched on much more seriously and deeply in the Book of Boba Fett, is recasting the Tusken Raiders from sort of one-dimensional alien villains, marauders, scavengers, and sort of subtly reframing them as more of an indigenous species, which they always were, on Tatooine, in which their first goal is not to kidnap Shmi Skywalker and torture her and leave her, to die in Anakin's arms, or to raid Luke Skywalker's land speeder when he goes out beyond the Dune Sea looking for that hermit Ben Kenobi. The Mando can communicate with him using a form of Star Wars ASL, and they are reasonable to his requests to cross their lands. And as I said, the relationship between outsiders and the Tusken Raiders gets even more attention in the Book of Boba Fett, and we will be discussing that one here in a few short weeks, based on where it falls on the timeline of these shows. But gentlemen, just a real quick one here. How do you feel about, and this is kind of why I personally am fond of the Favreau-Filoni model, is that they take something that we've, kind of cemented in our heads just as mere canon or just an article of faith that Tusken Raider's bad. And at least here, giving us the first signs that, we're in a new age. We have a new outlook on things, if you will, and let's make it more interesting than just, I see banthas. They may swing their gaffy sticks at us, and we'll have to fight them off. I don't know. I kind of dug it, and I think it bespeaks well to again taking existing iconography and reshaping it.
Yeah, I love it. It's Disney gone woke. No, but it's great. This is such fantastic writing because the Tusken Raiders, they were always kind of spooky but kind of goofy too. And I don't know what Lucas was doing in episode 1, but he didn't really flesh them out at all. And they're kind of throwaway characters. But I really liked how they, I don't think this was unintentional. I think they wanted to humanize them, but I think the biggest thing is they wanted to draw the parallel between the indigenous Mandalorians of Mandalore and the indigenous Tuskens of Tatooine. The idea that they're the indigenous population who have been sort of subject to all of these settlers, if you will, in the Outer Rim, same as Mandalore. They've always sort of been subject to the Empire or some conquering force or another, and even though they have their own strength, they've suffered. So there's a kinship there that's being set up that's really, really pretty cool. And the fact that you get sort of the brash Han Solo-esque gunslinger who clearly has the heart of coal instead of the heart of gold that Han Solo has. It's a very interesting flip-flop of the script. We see him, he's in the cantina, he's cool, he's got the gold coin in his hand, it's got the rebel insignia on it, and you're thinking, all right, this guy could be a neat dude.
Was it even the same booth? I mean, I don't know if I saw that on the internet or just like clocked it. I think it was Han's booth where Greedo met his
Han's booth? Yeah, so you're thinking, all right, this guy's maybe rough around the edges, but maybe he's going to be, who Cara Dune becomes to Mando this season. Spoiler alert. But, obviously we get a flipping of the script there. And to be honest, this is, I've seen it before, so I wasn't that surprised this time around. But you really don't see it coming. The whole turn where Ming-Na Wen you think is going to corrupt him, and nope, it turns out he was just corrupt to begin with, which you would expect from a bounty hunter, right? I mean, this is not, it's very predictable bounty hunter behavior, but it's definitely not the way it felt in the moment, because you feel like you're back in A New Hope. This is another one of those episodes where I'm really excited about The Mandalorian because I feel like I'm in Star Wars again. It starts with a great ship-to-ship battle. Then we're on Tatooine all of a sudden. You get this awesome interaction of this kind of weird old codger, this goofy Amy Sedaris, who I love and have loved for a very long time as an actor. And this amazing exchange between her and the child, which still, everything about it is just, as a parent especially, is just wonderful. You can't leave a kid alone in a vehicle? What are you, crazy? It was just such a oddly sort of touching episode in a way, and at the same time you get all that fantastic action and sort of the subterfuge, and for a very small role for and I know she's received many accolades, but it's still underrated. Ming-Na Wen
As Fennec,
just steals the show, steals the episode, because amazing choreographs for the fight scene. The sniper thing is wicked cool. The speeders are cool. There's so much. First of all, it's all merchandising to me, because I'm looking at this and the first thing I'm thinking is, all right, where's the action figure?
Nice.
Of this super sniper and the two, gunslingers on their horses riding in, right? And it's got Unforgiven written all over it, which is one of my favorite movies. No offense to City Slickers 2, which is Curly's Gold, absolute classic. But just everything about this episode, it's just I know this is a vehicle episode. I know it's putting things in place and setting up characters for later, which is wonderful. Happy. But it's so very Star Wars. This reminds me of those little books I got in school where it was not a choose your own adventure, but a mini Star Wars adventure book, featuring a character that they could license cheaply and put in familiar settings and do familiar things. And they couldn't use the word Skywalker, but they could use Tatooine, and they could use Boba Fett or something. This was I don't know if a nostalgia ride is exact. I don't want to cheapen it, but man, this took me back to being a kid and just loving Star Wars for the first time in a very long time. Now, don't get me wrong. The subsequent films I enjoyed for what they were. I enjoyed in the moment. But man, this one really hit home for me.
Well, I think it's a re-imaging or just a different angle of something we already know, which that's what makes it so attractive. We're kind of seeing a different side of it, or maybe we've talked, or I was talking about, or we are all talking about, whatever. The mythos just going deeper, right? It's not so surface level, so it seems like we're almost getting seeing the roots kind of built of what I think we're leading to. I know we keep getting to this idea that we're hoping there's a 3-part movie series that brings in Thrawn and brings the gang back together again, right? At least that's something I really want to see. And it's almost like those roots are continuously growing and kind of branching out through The Mandalorian or Ahsoka or whatever's coming along. I love the Firefly ship because I love the Razor Crest because it reminds me of Firefly, of the Serenity, and that is just such a fantastic show and another very cool ship. But they're so similar, which just kind of I think has pulled me towards that. The cantina scene, it was very obvious that the young bounty hunter, sitting even with his feet up, kind of like the cool guy, the cool new guy, but still needs someone with a little bit of gray in his beard. to help him along with his wisdom. I do like that little bit of a thing that was happening there. I was actually kind of hoping that Mando would shoot first, because that's how it
I
should
see what
be.
you did there. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
that's
love
right,
what.
because you and I are going to go round and round on that at some point. But go
Yes,
ahead.
we will. That's going to be a 10-round fight. I love what Master, Jedi Master, UrzaMaster has said, and I think you've echoed this prior, Lord Uther. Some fans, and I put fans just out there, not necessarily in air quotes, but some fans would see this episode primarily as fan service. And I think there's a difference between just trying to play a nostalgia beat, like, oh, look, we're going to name reference something, that only the real hardcore Star Wars denizens will know about, or, oh, look, we'll show you the Millennium Falcon taking off in the background there. Look, can you see it? Like, I love when we get familiar iconography. When you hear an X-Wing fighter roaring through space, it has that distinct engine sound. And the fact that this show, whether it's a blaster, a TIE fighter, a lightsaber, whatever, like, it's, as soon as you hear those audio effects that were originally created by legendary sound effects guru Ben Burt, you're in this universe. It's for real, and it takes you all the way back to whether you were 7, 17, or slightly older. So I'm glad when I hear this from my fellow Jedi Council members that it's not like just a rejection, like, oh, Filoni, that's obvious. Let's take him to Tatooine. We'll have him run into a sand crawler with Jawas, or so I appreciate it, because I think it's done from a place of respect and admiration and love for the elements of the show, and I think that's something we've talked about with Filoni in Ahsoka and his animated shows and so forth. Like, he gets it, and he just wants that experience that probably inspired him. He wants to share that, again, with fans our age, with our children's age, and so on and so forth. So, like I say, I'm kind of glad to hear that we, I believe, unanimously agree that this is not just some cheap play for, oh, remember this? Wasn't that cool? So that's
it's respecting, and we've talked about this with Picard season 3, because I think it's so critically important. It's respecting the source material without taking a whole bunch of shredded cheese and just putting it all over that, and then making your stomach bubble and putting another layer of cheese on there. Like, it's the correct way to pay homage to something that we love, and to respect it, and not use it to make a buck or push a story along or create a new line of action figures. There might be a little bit that goes into that, but at least it's respecting the source material in the mythos that we knew so well, without adding in midichlorians.
Ooh, yeah, and that's
Take that.
kind of the cool thing about, like, the bounty hunter pucks and the tracking tags and all this. Like, you kind of always wondered that, right? In the first trilogy, A New Hope through Return of the Jedi, there were bounty hunters, but, like, how did they track people down? Were they just like, native trackers or something? Like, where they were, like, I always think of Chuck Norris in Texas Ranger, where he, like, gets down on the ground, he's, like, tasting the dirt and smelling the dirt, and it's like, what the hell is he doing? Like, no, there's, like, a logical, very organized, crimey kind of way of doing this, but this fleshing out of this universe is done in such a respectful and careful manner, without sacrificing, like, the few cheesy moments that make sense to have, right? Like, you're reaching Mos Eisley Tower, it's like, oh, Mos Eisley. But at the same time, it's like, it's a big spaceport. Like, of course stuff is going down there, even after, it's just sort of back to an outer rim planet that nobody cares about after the Empire. Like, Luke isn't coming back here being like, hey, it's me, Luke. Remember, I used to blast womp rats down in the canyon. No, it's nothing like that. It's really giving it an importance without making it like a focal point for no reason. And I think to another show we recently dove into, Andor, with Mon Mothma, right? Having Coruscant being such a featured location, where they, I think of the digital remaster of Episode 6, where they sort of shoehorn in Naboo and Coruscant and be like, oh, these are important places, and they're having fireworks because the Emperor's dead. I'm like, first of all, how in the hell do they know? The Death Star just blew up.
Right.
Like, why would they be celebrating? There's still huge Imperial presence on these planets. They might not even know that the Emperor is dead yet. Or dead, I guess, as we now know.
Somehow he returned.
It's... Right. It's just sort of like this weird, jumping on to this weird point to make it a little bit more modern. But this does it in a completely opposite direction, which I feel treats the source material just so much more respectfully.
Well, and I love, that's the one thing I love about the Stormtrooper part of this, whether it was the first episode or now, we can see the, I'm going to say that, I can never say this word correctly. We're going to see the degradation.
Degradation. Easy for you to
whatever.
Yeah. No.
Good thing I teach middle school students.
Yeah.
You can see that the Empire has fallen apart, can't stay together, is being taken out by people that they've, done wrong at some point, that they're even putting their helmets on spikes, outside of a city to basically say they got what they deserved in a sense. But it's funny because it's all, like we talked about with New Republic, it's all going to come back around again in a sense. But I like that we've seen the Empire just kind of degrade into almost, not nothingness, but what's the word I'm looking for? Someone help me here.
Irrelevant.
Like just,
they're just not, they're not the governing party.
There we go.
Yeah. So,
shadows of their former selves, right? Like shadows of the Empire.
Nice. Saw what you did there too.
I think good reference.
I think we can all agree before we transition out of the gunslinger. There are two things. Number one, and it's kind of hard to say this in hindsight because we obviously know now the identity, but it was a big deal at the time that a pair of spurred boots made its way onto the crumpled form of Shennick Fan, sparking fans' hopes for the return of a beloved badass bounty hunter character. But we won't go any further than the show has led on at this point. All we know is that somebody has come across her in the Tatooine desert. I love dewbacks, by the way. I don't mind saying it. I know we got a very brief still shot of them in the original episode 4, and then they did a little bit more in the remastered 1997, when they touched up the Mos Eisley sequence. I think we saw, and even in episode 1. But love the dewback. It's slow, it's lumbering. It looks like it would eat you rather than carry you around. It's much more formidable than a blurg. And I think we can all agree here on the council. Again, I don't think we need to take a voice vote here, but fight choreography has evolved significantly from the 1967 Star Trek episodes to the 2019 Mandalorian and so forth. And again, you work with what you have, but when Fennec Shan has to take on Toro Calican there, she's not messing around, and it's well edited, well shot, even in the dark, and it gives you the proper oomph and the grunts. And we saw that when Mando stormed the Client's little fortress there and took out the stormtroopers one by one in a horror movie-esque montage, which is going to play a lot into this next episode we're about to get into, which is chapter...
One more thing.
Go ahead.
I like too that we're seeing, so I like the idea that we're seeing how calculated and strategic he is, like that he can outdo someone who's supposedly one of the greatest assassins in the galaxy or bounty hunters in the galaxy, that he's outthinking her. So I think that's just important as we continue to move forward here, that he is one of the best, right? And I just think that they're continuously kind of establishing that as well. All right, I'm done.
Oh no, that was strong. But he almost meets his match.
Oh, I know.
He almost meets his match here in Chapter 6, The Prisoner, which dropped a week later than Chapter 5. It was December 13th, 2019. So we're now in the holiday season, friends. People are shopping and ho-ho-hoing. And we're getting the darkest slice, I would say, of The Mandalorian. And that's from somebody who has seen all of the episodes through its current season 3. Again, this was not written by Jon Favreau. It's the second one that he did not pound out on the keyboards. It was directed by Rick Famuyiwa, who did Chapter 2, The Child, where Mando had his ship, had the Razor Crest stripped by the Jawas and had to retrieve the egg from the Mudhorn, and we saw the first use of the child's Force-like abilities. So he's back, and he co-wrote the episode with Christopher Yost, who has worked on Marvel projects, including some of the Thor big screen pictures and so forth. And I have to tell you, friends, just right up front, like this episode, it's like as if Quentin Tarantino took time out of his schedule and did a 42-minute Mandalorian episode, because this thing, it's grimy, it's nasty. This cutthroat crew, and the show was inspired by the Fox television series Prison Break, but this sort of gang of thugs and criminals and underworld type characters, I personally would have to reach very deep into the memory banks to think of 5 more villainous and just awful people, creatures, droids, than the ones that are on here. I mean, it's almost as if, you know, if The Mandalorian is a safe PG that's family friendly, this pushes it close, deep into PG-13 territory, not for what you see or don't see in terms of the violence, but just in terms of their attitude and their contempt for just general humanity and so forth. Like, rewatching this now for the third or fourth time in order to get ready for our show, like, I was just struck by just, this is a different voice than we would get even from Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau. These are bad hombres. And that's where I kind of want to start with your guys and your just impressions. You know, we had Mark Boone Jr., whom you've seen in Christopher Nolan films and Batman films as Ran, you know, the leader of all this. I mean, and if Sons of Anarchy, you know, if you wanted that vibe. You had comedian Bill Burr, who again had zero connection to or interest in
Star Wars.
Yeah, as a franchise, as your leader Mayfield. You had Natalia Tena, whom had played a sort of lighter role in the Harry Potter film franchise as Tonks, and she was also in Game of Thrones. And you had Clancy Brown, who was had done a lot of voice work for Filoni on the animated shows on Rebels and Clone Wars. He was in live-action Ahsoka as the mayor of Lothal. And I mean, Clancy Brown, you can go all the way back, you know, Blue Steel, Carnival, you know, the man's a formidable genre actor. And then you had the evil droid Zero. But I mean, guys, start with me there, because these people, just how they interact with each other, how they taunt Mando and the child. Like, I wanted to crawl into my screen, like the first time I saw The Karate Kid and William Zabka as Johnny, and I just wanted to, like, throttle them. Like, these are awful people. I'm not, you know, Darth Vader and Palpatine aside, you know, the classic villainry. These people, ugh. So anyways, run with it and tell me what you thought of these guys in their attempt to break out the prisoner from a New Republic.
Anytime I can get the Kurgan, I know I'm going to have a great episode. Sorry. That's just the way it is. I mean, Ramirez, right? I mean, you've got Clancy Brown out there. I also like that we're getting some very they're alluding to Mando kind of being not so nice of a guy that we know now. And it kind of shows an Andorian arc, right? To me, it's very Cassian Andor. It's kind of like they start here and they're going to get progressively better with what they're experiencing. Go ahead. You want to jump in there real quick?
I do, because this is one of the only episodes where it seems like that they, I mean, yes, we allude to him that he's had a past and used to do jobs, and you just thought, well, he's doing the work. But here they almost allude to it like he was a villain, right? And I don't think even subsequent episodes...
Without a doubt.
What's that? I don't think...
I said without a doubt. They're definitely painting that.
Right, and I just... This is like the most hardcore evidence, like that he's got a very checkered past, and then I think the show might even tiptoe away from it a little bit. I mean, again, not to, whatever, but I think this episode you're kind of like, wait a minute. I mean, was he like killing civilians? Was he like, did he have,
And they give him they give him the response of, I did what I had, like the typical I used to be a bad guy, I did what I had to do. Like that was a justification of what he had done before and what they were, again, kind of alluding to. To me, it seemed like a great D&D, the beginning of a great D&D campaign.
Ooh,
what I mean by that is you typically meet a group of ruffians or outcasts in the local, pub or the local tavern, and it's like, well, I got the strong man here, and I got the magic user there, and I got the distance guy there, and they just all come together to try and make some treasure, try and make some gold, right? They're just trying to make some money. And they obviously are going to go off on this adventure, which, just one more thing, too, it kind of references back to the last episode. We talked about how Mando just leaves the child and goes about his business. And at first I was, and I like your point, too, about when you rewatch things, you just start seeing things a little bit differently. At first I thought that Mando was like, it'll be fine, there's no problem with it, like it knows what's going on. But to your point, he doesn't know what to do with the kid, right? So he's like, if I just lock the kid in his room, everything should be fine, and I'll go, because it happens in this episode too. He just locks him in that little room, which the child keeps figuring out how to get out of there, and he's like, oh, he'll be okay, and it just goes about his business. And I do know as time goes on, we see that change, but I think it's very interesting that I thought it was purposeful in a sense, like, oh yeah, he can handle himself, but really it's, I don't know how to be a dad. Like, I don't know I should be supervising a little kid all the time, 24/7. UrzaMaster?
It's cute, right? I think as gritty and down and dirty as this episode gets or alludes to in terms of Mando's past, it shows the growth. This is one of those unique episodes of television that shows you, without showing you, like, no flashbacks or any kind of hokey, there's no picture of Mando, like, as a teenager wearing his tinier Veskar armor, like, holding up a severed head, like, hey. It's not like that. It gives you a picture of, like, probably Empire-era Mando doing what he needed to do to get by, to help the cause, but, it was a different time. Everybody changes as they grow, and those who don't grow stagnate, like this crew of ruffians. But, not to spoil anything for the future, but we do see that there's more complexity to even the on-the-nose sort of bad guy, right? And we get that with Book of Boba Fett, too. It's not just, this clone that's been through heck that now has to, solidify a criminal empire. There's a lot more nuance to the character, and I think the beauty of this is that it's like Andor, it's the Force without the Force. It's the journey to the gray from one point or another, and maybe some waffling back and forth from light and dark, that's really being told here. And I mean, my goodness, do we get some incredible acting from this crew of ruffians. And Bill Burr, who is very Bill Burr in this role, he even gives the I would say iconic line, I wasn't a stormtrooper, smartass. Like, that was incredible. Like, that moment was so, like, because he was vocally against, it's part of his bits back in the day is like Star Wars people were all nerds and he didn't get it. And then he was in it and he's like, actually I got a kind of a newfound respect for this because there is some really good storytelling, there's some good comedy, and there's some, true to life type stuff being, told there where he's gained a new perspective. And it's exactly what we get on The Mandalorian in this episode. And this is the coolest thing about what all these Disney shows are doing with Star Wars is they're telling a lot of the same stories in different ways that are novel, and that's, I mean, how much more Philip Roth can you get? You've gotten to the end of the road. How do you retell the same hero's arc 1,000 different ways? There's always a way. This is the way. Catchphrase. But,
Love it.
But furthermore, this is a great train heist. Yep. I mean, this is a great, you get so much in this episode that's so classic Western in space. And that's, again, you can see all those Western movies we grew up with that we love are in this film. You get Magnificent Seven, you get Unforgiven, you get The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you get, so much out of this ragtag group, and just the goofy situations they end up putting themselves in, like Mando having to use the cord to get the droid and then severing the droid's arm to get the key. It's like, they didn't think to take away his weapons when they locked him in there. It's so amazing.
Well, what I love, and I'm sorry, I'm going to jump on your train here for a second. I think the idea is, oh, hello, I didn't even realize I did that, because that's how good I am and how great this podcast is, which you should be clicking subscribe to just everything on the pending rebrand network, coming soon to a podcast website and YouTube channel near you. Wait a minute. Where was I going with all this before I started going on my commercial rant?
Something.
The ineptitude of the New Republic, how they got cocky. And Han Solo even tells Luke Skywalker at one point, don't get cocky, kid. And that's what's happened with the New Republic, right? They've got one human on a ship full of, prisoners, taking them somewhere very slowly, which it seems, by the way. And all these droids, we know how bad droids are. They're almost, to me, they're the stormtroopers of the New Republic. And
Roger.
Oh, I don't know.
Moment.
I don't know if the two of you understand how many times you bring me close to vomiting on the show anytime we reference some of those films. Now this is bad racing, but anyway, I do like how they're exposing us to the ineptitude of the New Republic, because it plays right into the travesty of the last three movies, except for The Force Awakens, that eventually comes about, and how the First Order is able to kind of rise up and come into power. It's because you've become too big for your britches. You always gotta, as Ice Cube would say, check yourself.
All right. And
tell me another podcast you'll find an Ice Cube reference like that. You're welcome.
Speaking of the lone human on the New Republic prison ship, that is actually played by Matt Lanter, who was the voice of Anakin Skywalker throughout Dave Filoni's Clone War animated series. So he gets to do a little bit of live acting, as you were. I love, again, I've said it a few times. I said it in Chapter 3 when Mando was stalking the stormtroopers. I love the little shout-outs and horror movie bits. The emergency lights come on. It's all red lighting. He's moving stealthily through the corridors. His coming up behind Mayfield, one frame he's there, and then the next frame, there's empty space, and then the next frame he's closer, and that would work in any Scream franchise or Elm Street or any,
like Aliens.
Batman, yes, it's a fantastic moment as Mayfield realizes, great, I'm about to get squashed here. And I love that, for at least because of all the doubt and clouds cast over Mando's past, I love that we aren't actually sure till the very end whether or not he just eliminated his rivals. I mean, did he in fact resort to his old ways and kill them? And I think it's kind of a relief / reinforcement of how serious he is about following, the warrior's code, the hero's code, that he ends up locking them all up in the cell together to stew, while that ship presumably does its leisurely laps around the mid-rim and so forth. But I liked that. I guess I could have lived with it either way, because they deserved whatever was coming to them. But I like the fact that he's like, no, I still have ethics and, the Mando I am now. So you guys can just sit here and rot. Because I know you don't have any grappling hooks to pull the droids in to free yourselves. So I did enjoy that. And some great cameos from our behind-the-scenes crew as the X-Wing squadron, who eventually are led to take down Rand's space station. You had, and their names are pure Star Wars. So we had Dave Filoni as one of the pilots. He was Trapper Wolf, and he actually, I think, will make another appearance later in the series. Rick Famuyiwa played Jib Dodger. So he was the other male X-Wing pilot, and the female X-Wing pilot was none other than Deborah Chow, who directed the third episode, The Sin, and also directed all of the Obi-Wan Kenobis, which we'll be discussing at a future time. She was Sash Ketter. So it was cute to see them get to finally be X-Wing pilots and take out the bad guys. And I want to finish my thoughts just again. Bill Burr's great, and we may not have seen the last of him. Wink, wink. And the others, Clancy Brown, and everybody gets their comeuppance, and even the child. I love the moment where the droid gets blasted to smithereens as the child raises his arm to ward him off and looks at his hand like, did I do that? And then you realize, of course, there's Mando who's come to save. But I just love, it's a great bit of silent comedy and character where it's like, it's like reaching out, and then all of a sudden, and he's like, yeah, and then, oh yeah, it was you. Mark Boone Jr., like in the first 5 minutes, even if you didn't know he was a veteran of Sons of Anarchy or these other pictures, he first tells Mando, hey, you're welcome here anytime. And then he's like, and by the way, we need your ship. And, Mando's like, well, the ship wasn't part of the deal. And he says, look, the only reason you're here is for that ship. Like, he's just easily reversible. Like, he has literally no moral compass. And, I wrote down the line, this deal keeps getting worse all the time. Like, he always is just changing, moving the goalposts, if you will. And then, like, when he sort of taunts Mando, it's like, yeah, I'm going to pay you. But is that gratitude? Is that what I'm hearing? Like, he's just... I don't know. He's a character actor. He's never going to lead a picture, and you always are going to put him in the same types of roles. But boy, I was so glad when he realized that his entire little criminal enterprise was going to go up in flames. It was a very satisfying, emotional climax to see Mando basically put one over on him after he spent the whole episode basically just eating bantha poodoo from these guys. There's Bill Burr saying, "Did you two make that?" And it looks like a pet. I think I'm going to keep it. Like, you take your hands off him. So.
That's awesome. Lots to talk about in these two episodes because they're just so good. So, with that, as we often do in the Jedi Council chambers, we should bestow upon these two episodes the colors of the lightsaber. Let's begin with Lord Uther.
Got it. Oh man, stuff's a little dusty here, but sorry about that, everybody. I'm gonna go Joker hair green for both the episodes, and maybe Lex Luthor green as well for these episodes. They're kind of filler episodes, but I don't think they are because they're advancing his storyline. So even though they kind of go off, these are like lots of D&D references today. It's kind of like these are little side quests as the main story moves forward, right? But they're side quests that you can say it's not really filler episodes. It's going somewhere. Obviously, continuously was roping me in with a wrist lasso and bringing me along in the series. So absolutely loved it. Greens for both. And I'm going to go to, why not, Jedi Master Psyllium Maas to give him one more win along with his Niners. So go ahead.
Well,
Sorry,
I want you guys and all of our viewers to know, like, I come, I keep receipts, and I try to come prepared to these episodes to bring you the knowledge that you've come to expect from the Jedi Council, from Pending Rebrand, from the Graying Jedi, from the Warp Core podcast, and so forth. So please remember, you want to subscribe. You want to be in on this train in 2024 and beyond, because we're reaching for the stars, friends, and we want to bring you with us as we journey to galaxies far, far away on 5-year missions to explore strange new worlds and so on. But in any event, this is just a complete visual representation of the kind of work I'm putting in to make sure that you guys know how serious I take the Star Wars saga. And it's in, coincidentally, a green file folder, which is what we will characterize both these episodes. Again, Jon Favreau has done a great job of shepherding and show running and stewarding Star Wars post-Return of the Jedi with all of the projects that they have currently juggling in the air, including a second season of Ahsoka. Very excited. But here we took a step back and had some different voices in the room. And like I say, they definitely give this show more, additional layers of personality and characterization. And like it was really strong stuff. And we're building up to an amazing 2-part season finale coming up.
Love it. And I don't think I can go without mentioning Michelangelo's Pizzeria Green for both of these episodes, because Cowabunga, dudes, this is the Star Wars that I remember. I can't say enough. I know these are standalone episodes. These are episodes in a bottle. Aside from seeing the first 2 in this season, if you jumped in at a random point and just watched 1 or 2 of these 2 would stand on their own very well. You'd feel really good about everything you were seeing. As a Star Wars fan, it definitely serves you, but it also gives you a lot of fresh perspective. It gives you some really good storytelling. It gives you great acting. You get a lot of fun cameos. You can tell the actors and writers and cast and crew are just having a good time making this series, making these episodes in particular, without compromising lore, without disrespecting what made Star Wars great all the way back in '77. Like, this is what you want to see. If there was a greener lightsaber than green, I would give it to these 2 episodes. For me, the first time I watched this show, these 2 episodes, along with The Sanctuary, were the ones that really sold me on the series. It made me want to watch through to the end, because I was finally getting some Star Wars stories that, again, made me feel like a little kid. It took me right back to Attack on Thyphura and some of the other, choose your own adventure style books that I read as a 3rd grader, and I've still got them somewhere, and that's how important they were to me. It was foundational to UrzaMaster's youth and adulthood now, and I'm excited to see it setting this universe up for kids of that age now, and my kids. Although I will say, my boys are more Trekkie than they are Star Wars fans, but they, like me, love both. So, with that, we have journeyed yet again to that galaxy far, far away to saddle up with Mando and the child, and we will do so on our next episode 22 incoming of the Graying Jedi podcast. But until then, for all of you, here, there, abroad, and everywhere, may the Force be with you.
And also with us.